we feel.
Just don't go to your desk and they. Call this meeting of the Woburn School Committee to order for April 14th, 2026. If you are able, please join us to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, members of the audience, please remain standing for a moment of silence and reflection for our staff person recently passed away, Erin O'Neill. Moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the Superintendent and Secretary of the School Committee please call the roll?
Ms. Chisholm.
Here.
Ms. Crowley.
Present.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Present.
Ms. Nagel.
Present.
Mr. Oliveira. Present. Ms. Wetzel.
Present.
Ms. Cormier.
Present. Please note that this meeting is live streamed by Woburn Public Media Center, and by speaking, you consent to be recorded. Please silence all phones and other devices. First item on the agenda, public comment. Have we anyone here that would like to come before us before public comment?
I would.
Come on down.
My name is Michael Shure.
Oh, so you're going to go over there. You have 3 minutes. We'll walk you through it. Don't worry. I'm still going to time you. Name and address,
Yep.
and we cannot respond to
Yep,
any comments.
I understand.
I figured, just making sure. Anybody else?
Okay, so my name's Michael Shure. I live at 2 Lee Road in Woburn, Mass. I used to sit in one of these seats a long time ago, way long time ago, but so I understand the dynamics. The reason I'm here, a few weeks ago I stopped by the Reeve School to pick up my grandson, and I saw these people walking around with T-shirts that said WTA on the front, and then on the back, MTA, Proud Union Educator. I took offense to that. I'm a taxpayer in this city. I understand why they're doing it. My honest opinion, I think the principal should tell them to go home or change their shirts. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but, I was appalled, actually. And, I understand the politics and everything when the negotiations are going on, but to do that, to me, it's showboating, and it's uncalled for. So as a parent of kids that graduated from the Woburn school system, and as a grandparent of someone that's in the Woburn school system right now, I just want to voice my concern about that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shure. Would anyone else like to address the committee?
Longer walk since you left the table. Hi, everybody. Brian Preventure, 25 Rumford Park Ave. First, I just wanted to take a minute to thank administration and members of the committee for all the open forums that you guys hosted for the principal searches and everything. I think that was wonderful. I think it was great to involve the community and solicit feedback. I hope that that becomes part of the hiring process going forward in the future. Again, just really liked that and really appreciated it. I also wanted to take a moment just to talk about the budget. I believe that that is probably one of the most important things that we do here. I appreciate that the committee has posted all the material and has allowed the public to look at the budget. However, I continue to be concerned about the lack of transparency surrounding what constitutes an added position and how certain positions are being moved in and out of the budget without a clear understanding of how they're paid, whether it's from the city, whether it's from revolving accounts, grant funding, or some other mechanism. I urge the committee and admin to be more transparent and report the revenue generated from grants and revolving accounts and the state and anywhere else that we're getting money so that we can understand where all these positions are being funded from. Additionally, I'd like to ask for clarity on how the budget is linked to the strategic plan. I know that's been said a couple of times, but I just guess I don't totally understand it. In looking at all of our MCAS data on the DESE website, it seems that our MCAS scores are going down. And so I'd really like to see how the budget is going to address those academic needs in the future and how we can maybe shift that back so that our MCAS scores start going back up. I really want to support the school budget, and I know that the investment is for our children. Academics is one of the most important things that we can do as a city. I just hope the committee will work with the administration to produce a more transparent and accountable budget that we can all get behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parpenter.
Hi, everyone. Rachel Kuberry. I live at 6 Blake Street. I'm going to speak on 2 issues tonight, the budget and the open meeting law. So on the budget, as you know, I've shared my concerns about the budget over the last few weeks. I've appreciated that many of my questions and comments were addressed at the Finance Subcommittee meeting last week. I was particularly interested to hear that the city carries an estimated COLA for the WTA in negotiating years such as this one. I hope that information will be shared tonight to a wider public audience. I also appreciate that the budget spreadsheet with the in the weeds data has already been publicly shared ahead of this meeting. Thank you. I did take a quick peek at the presentation for tonight, and some of the concerns I'm going to share are in there, and I appreciate that. But I'm here to speak tonight to share my continued concerns that the budget documentation lacks the information and transparency required in order for taxpayers to clearly see what they're paying for, as well as all funding mechanisms used to fund the schools. I'm specifically looking for enrollment data, including current, past, and future projections. We actually have this information at the ready in the feasibility study, so I hope it can be included in the budget. I also want to see the role of, quote, teacher in the budget more clearly defined. I'm not asking for specific names to be placed back into the document, but rather specific roles such as math teacher or 5th grade teacher. By simply substituting the word teacher for the teacher names, useful information was lost in the budget. I also want to see the inclusion of all means of funding, including our federal and state entitlement grants, which total over $2 million according to DESE, and circuit breaker reimbursements. I want to know what this money is paying for. As I shared via email, while I didn't complete an exhaustive search, I was able to quickly see that information like this is included in budgets of many of our DESE comps, including Medford, Norwood, Gloucester, and Cambridge, as well as surrounding municipalities, including Burlington, Wilmington, Winchester, and Lexington. I've also not heard meaningful discussion on cost-saving measures that have been either implemented or considered in order to offset the added positions and budget increase. For example, there have been no discussions at the regular school committee meetings around class size at the Joyce, reducing bubble rooms such as the one at the Harold Wyman, eliminating positions through attrition, reducing bus routes, including stops that are well within safe walking distance to schools, or implementing student fees. Our taxpayers cannot continue to fund a growing budget without at least talk of cost savings. I thank you for all the work that you've done to get the budget up to this point, and I look forward to hearing robust and thorough deliberations tonight. A brief comment about my open meeting law complaint that's on the agenda for later tonight. I look forward to resolution on this issue. Just so that the public and the whole committee is aware, I tried to handle this issue without filing a formal complaint, but after 10 months and 30 email exchanges between this chair and the previous chair, the subcommittee minutes continue to be incomplete. I believe tonight that the committee will commit to following the open meeting law and take responsibility to improve public access and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goulart. Anyone else that would like to make a public comment this evening? I think that's everybody. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The City Council Liaison to the School Committee, Mr. Yano Amara. Also wearing money green tonight, I see.
What was that?
Money green.
Money green.
Yeah, hey, it's a beautiful day today. Good evening, everyone. It's been a while. My apologies. Hope everyone is doing well, enjoying the day today. Just wanted to thank you all for, working on the budget and the teacher's contract, and that's really it. That's all I have. If anybody has any questions for me, per usual, call, email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Amara. I do not see our student rep, so we will move on to reports.
Busy winning awards.
Usually, yeah. I will move on to reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff. First on the agenda is Woburn Community Education Foundation update from Alexander Ray, Executive Director of the WCEF. Unfortunately, he is not able to make it tonight, but he was coming to plug the Hall of Fame coming up on May 9th. WoburnEdFoundation.org for more information on that, including sponsorships, which he would like to see people sign up for sponsorships. So stay tuned for more information on that.
Madam Chair, can I be heard for a second?
You may.
So with regards to item letter D, the Eagle Scout project at the Reeves Elementary School, the candidate for an Eagle Scout is not available to come this evening. He will be coming on May 12th, where he will present to us. So I will make a motion to remove that from the agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We will see Mahook on 5/12. And moving forward, statements of interest, Dr. Crowley.
Sure.
Ooh, goodness.
Wow.
Maybe not all the way.
They're at the Linsky. It's this dark.
Lordy. How's that?
One more on our side.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Movie theater.
Yeah.
That's what the statement of intent does. I just wanted to provide a presentation to the committee, to the public, about the statement of intent. I need to first of all start by saying thank you. This is a team effort, as always. Most things are here at the Woburn Public Schools. Each of the statements of intent that will be submitted was over 40 pages, and a lot of it is highly technical information and derived a lot from the DNISCO report, but I will tell you that Lenny Berman went and counted the windows for us to make, countless hours of looking at our schools with the critical lens. And so thank you to Lenny. Alex was also instrumental in doing a lot of this legwork, and so thank you to him. Maureen and Courtney engaged in it. The principals engaged in it. I want to go back in time and thank what was the name of our building committee? The ad hoc?
BCPC?
Building Committee Capital Planning.
Yeah. So, again, multiple people have engaged in the process. I'm excited to hit submit this week. What I do want to say is that this is a grant application. This is not a guarantee that we will be accepted into the pipeline. And so, with that being said, let me begin. So. This predates me, so those that were here, there was a master plan that was developed in the 1990s where the Goodyear and the Clapp School were consolidated, and the Hurled and the Wyman were consolidated, and so the master plan called for the Alta Vista and the Linscott to be a consolidated unit, and that really is what this the goal of this SOI is. We also had, in 2023, the feasibility study done by Donna DNISCO, which helps to confirm that the Alta Vista and the Linscott Rumford are really in their final stages. And so that was instrumental in putting this plan together. The objective, the goal of this, as everybody here knows, is to consolidate the two schools, but also, as we talk about, to add an ECP onto the consolidation and make room for expanded special ed programming. The drivers, if you will, these are the priorities that we voted on. Priority 5 is the systemic decay. I apologize. On this priority 5, the second bullet point down, I don't like it. But current funds are wasted maintaining it. That's not true. We need schools to stay open. There's no money being wasted on our schools ever. And so I apologize for the verbiage. And the capacity and growth is an interesting one because you'll see a slide in the future that talks about the potential growth in North Woburn. And one of the things that we've learned with the candidly over time is when the apartments come, we learned the hard way with the Avalon. We can't predict how many students the yield will be, but I think it's very possible that the number of students in North Woburn will grow significantly in the near future. And the educational inequity, you'll hear me talk about a little bit in the future. The quick version is schools that were built in the 1922, one of them, and 1969, the other one, they're not designed to support the 21st century learning. On last Friday, we were able to tour the Harold Wyman, one of our newer schools, and the design is so much more functional than some of these older schools. And again, we are doing a great job educating our students in all of the schools. I really want to make sure I'm saying that. But the needs have changed for both classroom teachers and the specialists and the students since the 1922. Again, one of the things that's happened is that our teachers are in spaces that weren't designed to support modern learners. And at the Linscott Rumford, for example, we have 3 special education teachers in one classroom, 2 ML teachers in one classroom. So we're meeting the needs, but it's a space issue. And so the BCBA and the school psych share an office in a converted storage room, as an example. At the Alta Vista, again, the special education teachers are in one room. The occupational therapist is in an office which is located off the cafeteria, which is obviously not optimal. 2 ML teachers in one room. And again, it's no fault of the architecture that when it was built, but when we think to the future, we want to try to be mindful of designing schools that will hopefully meet the needs of our students for the next 50 to 100 years. You heard me allude to this earlier. The reality is that there's a potential of up to 2,600 units in North Woburn. Some have been approved already, and some are pending review. I do want to say thank you to Tom Quinn on the city side, because he's been really, really instrumental in helping us anticipate when things will come online. Again, it's hard. There's no crystal ball, but when there's 2 and 3 and 4 bedroom units being built, it does foreshadow student growth, and we are trying to then meet that need. I alluded to this previously. One of the things that stuck out to me is even the power source in every classroom. We don't have enough outlets to support Chromebook carts, and so there's certain just fiscal realities of or modern realities that the buildings don't support. And so what we're trying to do is design a school, hopefully, that will allow for a full continuum of special education services, distraction-free learning, so the students are able to concentrate and teachers are able to have a great space to work. The other thing, and again, this is common information, the Alta Vista does not have an elevator, and so those kinds of things we need to address. So our solution, the Alta Vista, because we have to create a priority school, so the Alta Vista is the priority school, and that's done because we believe the building would happen in front of the Alta Vista. The land is available. The NISCO design provided us that information. Combined with the Linscott Rumford and the space for the ECP and RISE at this moment, but again, we have challenges with space, and I'm looking at Maureen because she when I say the RISE program, but it's the SOAR program, it's the assessment center. We have so many different needs currently in our buildings, and so hopefully we're able to build a school that meets the needs of all of our students for many years to come.
Can I ask a clarifying question at that point? So when you say RISE here, you mean RISE? or you mean SOAR because it's Alta Vista? Because the way I read it was,
Yeah.
we are going to build for ECP and for RISE here because we have the opportunity to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I would say yes, however, the programs in the schools, special education programs, they're always fluid and enrollment changes from year to year. What we know is that we have many programs and that they do take up a pretty sizable footprint in the buildings. And so the idea is that the building would be able to hold a larger program, and if it were today, that would be RISE.
Can I just say something on that?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say something on that because I think that is brilliant, to take our largest growing special education program with our most excellent learners with exceptional resiliencies and take them as the vision to build a new school. I think that's brilliant. Because I think that if we build buildings around the resiliencies of these children, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in terms of public education. So I actually feel very strongly about that. Thank you for allowing me to step on the soapbox.
If you wouldn't mind,
But
Ms. West.
I just love that. I love that vision of using RISE as the litmus to build the next elementary school. Even if RISE is not going to move there, I think that given that program is the most rapidly growing, that with the ECP is just, I just fully support that. So thank you.
Ms. Wetzel.
Mr. Superintendent.
I was actually going to say something very similar. I completely agree. But I did, for clarification purposes, as we're writing the SOI, we're not writing in details about what the individual programs would look and feel like. It's more of this is our thought, and then that process is later down the line.
Yes.
Where we specialize. Right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
but again, I think one of the things we learned, candidly, is the Harold Wyman is a great brand-new school, and when we have the RISE program there, it's not designed in the way to, it's functioning, it's doing its job, but when we think to the future, what can we do to think about our population in that way?
Yes, love it.
Can
Always.
I think just for people in the public that maybe aren't as familiar with it, the other piece that goes along with some of the programs that have students with significant needs is things like occupational therapy rooms and appropriate spaces for physical therapy. And they're just, I think what we understand is that we need to very carefully plan this so that the building has the correct space for what we anticipate needs would be with any larger special education program.
Thank you.
So as a timeline, what this is an application, as I said at the beginning, to MSBA. It signals that we're interested in building a new school. We are not obligated in any way, shape, or form financially at this time. And I just want to make sure that the public and this committee and the city council, everyone know, we are applying to get into the MSBA pipeline with the hopes of them coming and visiting us for a feasibility study, and at which point we're invited into the process, and then we can really start having robust conversations about what a RISE program would look like, what the pre-K would look like, et cetera, et cetera. And so we will submit our application tomorrow, I hope. And we don't hear back until the fall. So it's unfortunate. You kind of want to know by the end of the week. We don't. They receive. I think they received. Over 50 applications last year that they review very carefully, and I think just over 50% are accepted. And so there's a process that they go through, and so and that's what hopefully in the fall we are invited into this more formal process, and it would be really exciting to have this approved and move forward. I think the students in North Woburn deserve a great school. And all of our students, as I want to say, the building is kids are learning and students are learning and teachers are teaching, but the idea of modernizing and providing even a next level would be terrific. And so that's an overview of the SOI, and happy to answer any questions if people have them.
I'm sure staff would be equally thrilled with the new school.
I would think so.
Ms. Nagel?
Yeah, this is not a question, just going back to the comment about space and preparing for it. One thing that I know that you've explained various times is we're projecting out, we are trying to predict as much as possible, but even in the best case scenario, everything gets approved. We get all the funding from MSBA, we get funding from the city, it gets done, we break ground, we build it. We're talking about 8 years down the line, and a lot can change over 8 years, right? So I always want for all of us to keep that in mind, because a lot can change over 8 years. And I think of it for myself sort of as the flu vaccine, right? And they look at the strand and they try to predict what the strand is going to be for next year, and they give us the vaccine, and most of the time they get it right. Sometimes they don't get it super right? But like the best that we can do is to be very well informed and to be looking at the trends of growth, to be looking at what buildings are coming online, to be looking at what special needs might be looking like, our different programs, and build based on that with no guarantee that this is going to be the right fit.
I appreciate the fact that we understand there are no guarantees, and so I think what we do know is kids deserve and staff deserve a great learning environment, and so we will endeavor to build that for them.
Ms. Crowley?
Yeah, so this is exactly how I was envisioned the SOI being constructed, so no pun intended. So thank you, Dr. Crowley. I think this is what, in my opinion, what really we need to sell at the MSBA is the Woburn vision as to why this is the last piece and why the school is so important to the running of the city itself and the culture of the city. But also, I want to go back to the RISE thing and the ECP. I think it's important when we build the building committee to make sure we have subject matter experts. I know Maureen is going to be on top of that as being the subject matter expert, but also having RISE, the occupational therapists, people, related service providers, if they would love to join the building committee so we have their voice when we construct rooms and hallways, because I'm thinking about the reverberation of noise and all of the things that impact students these days. So really just looking at this building holistically as to what is the best interests of students. And just to put things in perspective, building these buildings during the Cold War, the IDEA, which is the funding law for the special education, didn't even exist yet. Neither did the ADA. So when we have to go back in time when there was no equity in education, it was about putting kids in 2 classrooms for each grade level with a teacher in front of them for 25 students, and that was school. And so now we are really opening up the doors and looking at education much differently. So I'm very excited about this. The only downside, for the record, is that it's not the middle schools. And I really think that we should have prioritized the middle schools, but I'm all in on this. But we do have a $200 million project waiting in the wings after this is done. So those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Wetzel?
First of all, thank you for all the hard work. I know those 2 documents you put together, 40 pages each, was a lot. To you and the team that helped craft that, to the City Council for their approval for the MSBA funding, or for the opportunity, not the funding, excuse me. Very important words to distinguish. I thank you for that as well. You touched on it a little bit, but I'm wondering what ways the community has to be involved in the process as we move forward, should we be selected. Maybe that's being part of the ad hoc committee from the parent perspective, or are there other ways the community is able to provide feedback and be involved?
So I would say, having never done this, I would envision this being a very civic. I mean, I think the community needs to be engaged.
Agreed.
I think we're asking the community to fund quite a bit of it. The MSBA funds some, but the city and the community funds quite a bit. And so from just my own perspective, I think there's opportunity for people to be engaged in this process, so, and I think they should be.
Agreed, I think so too. So as the process moves forward, assuming we continue in it, we would then tell the community ways that they can have timelines and things like that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Does the MSBA tell you how many schools apply once the application deadline closes, or do you just have to wait to the fall?
I don't know that answer.
Okay.
I can call and ask, but I don't know.
No, it's fair.
I think it varies year to year. At one point, and I have so many numbers in my head, and I'm reluctant to say something because I don't want to get it wrong. But the different districts have different priorities, and so I think that it varies. Some cities, I know, for example, Worcester has submitted multiple SOIs for multiple years. They might be done, but maybe Springfield comes online, and so the other thing that has to happen is the community needs to support even the SOI, and so given the fiscal realities in different communities, it's hard to say.
That makes sense. No, I appreciate that. And then going back to something Ms. Crowley said about how school has changed since the Cold War, I mean, I would say it's changed since I was in school, drastically. Just the education scene is very, very different for the better, and it's fantastic. And when we walk through the schools on our Friday tours, you really see all the rooms that are needed for all the individual service providers and why these spaces are so important to have. And when you go into a building that was built that long ago, it just doesn't have those, as you alluded to, and we see that every Friday. But we make good use, and kids are learning.
Right.
But you want to interrupt, go ahead.
No, I'll pick right up, because last Friday we were at the Harold Wyman,
Yes.
and we went into some classrooms, but you see right outside the classrooms, interventionists working with some smaller group, but right next to the classroom. And so the space is available for that pull-out right there. So,
which is nice, and a new school.
Right.
Yes. And I guess my last thing is I'm just really excited for this opportunity for our North Woburn schools have waited so long, for the ECP that's waited so long for its own space, and for us to really individualize for some of our programs that we have. And it's such a great way to keep kids in our backyard when we have these programs, and that we can build a space for them. It just makes me really excited and proud to be here. So thank you.
Yes, Ms. Chisholm.
I just, on the ECP part of this, because I know going back to the good year when I was on that building committee, there were certain things that we wanted to add, and they would not allow us to do so. So I'm just hoping that we have a good fight in this to keep what we want in there. Because I know even like at the high school, we wanted certain classrooms added, thinking ahead, and they only would let us build to what the population was then. So within like a 3-year, so we couldn't do the foresight that we wanted to do.
So that still holds true. There's a formula with the MSBA, so it's predicated on enrollment and projected enrollment, but they'll come in and do a study. The MSBA does this. The ECP is eligible to be part of this, though. So, yeah.
Because that's what we have to sell to the citizens, big time. That we don't want to build a school that in 3 years, like the Harold Wyman, was full. And it's just, if we're going to do it, let's do it with a little bit of a push. And so I'm hoping the aldermen are listening, so when we have to ask for a couple extra $1 million to do this, it will be, and I know it's tough times, and I know that people are getting nervous, but it's something that I think that we need to do. So that's my just thinking ahead.
Mr. Oliveira.
Just clarification and jumping on Ms. Chisholm's question. So this idea is that MSBA tells us here's kind of the parameters that you have. But if we as a city wanted to add additional things, we could at our own cost. Correct? That would not be reimbursed.
Correct.
Okay. If we needed to add these additional 3 rooms for something at a $6 million cost, that's coming on us with no reimbursement.
Like air conditioning at the gym at the high school.
Yes. Any of that great stuff.
Was that one of them?
That was one of the fights that we lost.
Vice Chair Crowley, did you have any?
Oh, yeah, I just, in terms of, through the chair to Ms. Wetzel, I believe that the building committee is made in module 2 through the process, and I think those meetings are public. So there's that meeting, I think they meet like, Ms. Chisholm, like every month or something. Yeah, those meetings are public, so you had asked how, it's a very public-facing process. I remember for the Harold Wyman, we had, I don't know, 20 community meetings throughout the process, just in the post-feasibility stage. So it's very public-facing. I just wanted to.
All right, great. Any other comments on the statements of interest? Thank you, Dr. Carly.
Thank you.
Lenny and
Great.
Alex and anybody else that had
Oh,
a
yeah,
hand in them. They are excellent, and I'm ready to sign.
We don't need to vote or anything?
We don't need to.
No, you've
We did.
you've done what you've.
He
Okay.
takes
Yep,
that and
thank
runs
you.
with
Just don't want to have to meet again next week.
it. Next week's too late. Closes on the 17th. All right, next we have FY27 budget. Again, Dr. Crowley.
So, again, Alex will take it over momentarily, and I want to thank him for the work he's done on the budget. I thank the leadership team for their work on the budget. This is one of the most important things we do, and I think the budget reflects our values. And so with that being said, we tried to make sure that we're included as much as possible, but recognizing the limitations that we all face. So, Alex?
So I do just want to say that I think everyone will be happy. This is a robust presentation that you're about to see. Some of the slides will be a repeat from what we've seen, but there's a lot of new information coming out tonight. So without further ado, FY27. All right. So today's budget proposal is really the result of a several months long process, going as far back as October of last year, meeting with building principals, walking their buildings, getting to know their needs. Since that time, we've worked collaboratively with building principals, directors, administration, school committee members, so I thank everyone involved in that process and the role you've played. I won't read the vision slide to everyone. The part here that continues to stick out to me and sort of guide us is that ultimately we're doing this to prepare all of our students for their best future. We have spoken about the strategic plan, namely the three tiers of that: collaboration and consistency, tiered systems of support, and structures for deeper learning. All the while that we're building this budget, we're taking that into account. So we're here today, again, defining the scope of this FY27 budget proposal, similar to prior versions. What you're going to see here today does include step and lane increases, contractual increases on out-of-district transportation, out-of-district tuition, transportation, and utilities. You will see some line item increases and some targeted new FTE asks. I will foreshadow that previously we were at 12 FTE asks. We are down to 6 in this version of the budget, which you will see momentarily. And as in prior versions, this currently does not include any cost of living adjustments based on ongoing negotiations. So that being said, the bottom line as we sit here today is a $99.7 million budget. This represents a $3.8 million increase year over year, or as a percentage, a 3.99% increase from last year. I did want to take a look at some of the cost-saving measures that we've done, and this is really throughout the course of the budget cycle. First and foremost, we have ongoing budget discussions, which usually result in some changes. You're going to see on the next slide that we have made some significant changes from the last version of this budget to the tune of about $540,000, which has come off the previous version of this budget to get us to a budget that's just under 4%. You'll see some figures on utilizing grants and other funding sources, as well as strategic reallocations that were driven by enrollment trends. So I do want to take some time on this slide. This is the crux of a lot of what we did over the past couple weeks anyways. Again, this speaks to a reduction of about $538,000. On the left-hand side of this screen, you're going to see all the reductions that have been made. And on the right-hand side, you're going to see some targeted reallocations or usually increases. I may bounce back and forth because some of these were done in conjunction with each other, as was the case with the first item. So we previously had building subs as an ask for 4 FTEs to the tune of about $180,000. In this version of the budget, we think that we can take an alternative approach here. In lieu of the 4 FTEs, and increase the substitute line by 100,000. That net result is a decrease of 80,000, and that's just an alternative way that we're looking at sort of solving that problem. The next thing that we looked at doing, if you recall from previous versions or discussions regarding the wellness teacher. So right now we have a wellness teacher that is 0.4 in wellness at the high school, 0.6 in history. And while the ask was really to have one teacher do history, one do math, and not have someone in gym shorts and gym shoes running back and forth to both, we do think that we'll be able to run that model for another year and sort of get by with that. The next thing we did, and this is really a reallocation with the reading specialist, so we have an anticipated teaching vacancy in the science department via retirement, and we think that we can reallocate that to a reading specialist at the high school and take that previous additional request off the board. The next thing that we did was looking at interventionists. So the prior version of this budget counted for 28 total interventionists. What we did is we're coming down by a total of 5 interventionists within the operating budget, bringing us down to 23, and that's a net decrease of about 102,000. The next thing that we did, and there's been some questions about this, so I'll take a minute on this, the lunch monitors. If you recall, in FY25, for those of us that were here, that was a challenging budget cycle. At the time, all of the lunch monitors in the district were in the operating budget. As a measure to sort of alleviate that, we moved them into the school lunch revolving account in their entirety. Prior versions of the FY27 budget, and if you recall back then, we did say that we'll be coming and moving them in at a later date. So prior versions of the 27 budget had moved them into the operating budget in their entirety to the tune of about $260,000. In order to make a reduction and make this a more livable number, what we're now saying is that we're going to take $100,000, keep it in revolving, and then the budget impact is then $160,000. What we've done, and what you may see if you get into the weeds on this, is that effectively 4 schools would be in the operating budget, 3 schools would be in the revolving account, and really, I guess the logic there is to move more into the operating budget than not. The 7 elementary schools, we did a 4-3 split there. And again, it's a $160,000, $100,000 split between the operating account and the revolving. The next thing that we did, and this speaks to some of the line items that we looked at, we've spoken a lot about electricity. We do still think that we can come down $50,000 from the original ask. I know that overall we need to have an increase in this budget, but this still represents about a 7% increase year over year. So we do think that we'll be able to get by with this number. It's still a $110,000 increase year over year. So the next thing is the vocational tuition line. This is based on students actually attending the Minuteman Tech next year. Currently, there's not anyone going there, so we think we can zero this line for next year, as we won't have any tuitions to pay. Let's see, so vocational. The next thing we looked at was homeless transportation. So on a monthly basis, I look at the riders we had for the prior month. So I looked at the March riders and then projected those riders out based on their given rates for next fiscal year over 180 days. And believe that we can continue to come down on the transportation line by nearly 25,000 and still be okay on that line item. The lunch monitors we did talk about. The Joyce Middle School supply line. So the initial version of this budget had increases in each supply line sort of across the board. What we did is, giving a challenging budget cycle, is we're going to be level funding those with the exception of the world language department. And in conjunction with that, you'll see on the right-hand side that we're also going up on the Kennedy world language by the amount of $5,000. The rationale for that, the World Language Department, for the first time, I think this year, has middle school department heads. Through monthly meetings that we've had with them, it sort of came to fruition that some staff were using out-of-pocket to pay for some supplies. I think it's something that really we just need to revamp, some of the programs that we have there, and in collaboration with the curriculum department, we'll be getting some new resources for these departments. The next thing that I want to jump to, and sorry I said I'd be jumping around, the third point about the adjusted high school nurse retirement date on the right side of the screen. We originally had a teacher that was going to be retiring at the end of this year. They are extending their retirement date. As a result, I had previously funded at more of an entry-level position there. Given the fact that this particular person has about 29 years of steps, that's a significant increase to the budget, so that goes up $25,000. One thing to note is that the early retirement incentive that we would have been paying out this year is on the left side of the screen as a reduction, because that offsets that person's early retirement incentive, which is a contractual number given to that unit. And then the last item that we've changed in this version of the budget is we have an employee whose contract is up at the end of this year, and this is just a market-based contract adjustment for that employee. One thing to look at briefly is grants. This was the second sort of tier of the cost-saving measures that we take advantage of, is grant funding. Particularly in the area of ESSA and the IDEA. And while we don't have the FY27 numbers, as they don't come out, or we won't know until August, this is a look at what FY26 grant allocations have looked like. So again, while it doesn't give you exact FY27, it gives you an idea of what to expect.
Can you just go?
Yep.
Sorry. So the grants are written, and we don't know, just to be clear, the FY27 grant amounts. We do know, we have received word that the entitlement grants, the federal entitlement grants are coming, but at a reduced amount for next year. They asked us to think about 85 to 90% of this year's allocation, just to, again, for the committee's
And that's what's
information.
reflected here.
Sorry?
And that's what's reflected here?
No, this is our current, this is current year.
I believe the number
FY26.
was 7%, was the one they most recently.
The most recent is
Is the
7%.
7%.
Yeah.
On the ESSA
Yeah,
grants.
yeah.
Which, again, in terms of the grant that holds positions that you're looking at, which is your Title I teachers, we would still be able to fund all of our Title I educators at a 7% reduction from the current cost. Yeah. And I can answer any questions about that.
1.3 million is such little money. That is not nearly enough. That's my comment on that. That's literally like 3 kids.
Do you want me to comment on the IDEA grant?
Sure. It's not enough.
So, yeah, I mean, the IDEA grant historically, we have used anywhere from $600,000 to $1 million to cover out-of-district tuitions. What the grant and the way that we use it is the tuitions in many of the special education costs are unpredictable. And tuitions, a residential tuition, for example, is very often over $400,000. So what it does is it gives us some room for the students that we anticipate maybe going out of district, move-ins that we get, et cetera. And so there's always a large portion of the 240 grant that is allocated for this. It's also a portion I also typically, and again, the grants are written in August, but I typically write a portion of it for staffing that is not predictable. So for example, If we are in need of an extra one-to-one paraprofessional, and these things come up all the time in special education, we rely on our grants to help us because they're not things that, we don't budget for people that we don't know we need. We use our IDEA grants for things like the Fellows Program. We don't know how many fellows we will get, but when we are able to participate, we work with both Endicott College and Merrimack to bring fellows in. And we often use grant funds for technology, communication devices, different special education needs that you don't know until a team meets and determines a child needs it. And so I would say the majority of the grant is, or a large portion is utilized for out-of-district tuition costs that come out. But that's part of the sort of the flexibility with the IDEA grant and how we use it for special education.
And I can just give, with the ESSA grants, especially Title I, one of the distinctions is that you can't supplant, it has to be supplement, so we can't like move things that we know that we need in the operating budget and fund them through Title I. They're intended so that Title I schools are given kind of more and above that of the base. And so we typically, because the grants are written in the summer, particularly through in the fall, the curriculum subcommittee, we go through the kind of the specifics, but in terms of like a general overview, the Title I again funds Title I teachers, additional interventionists, so we do kind of the base interventionists at all of our buildings, and then we add on additional ones to our Title I schools. It does our family engagement nights, it supports the family engagement liaisons, and then our Title II is primarily right now focused on what we've learned about with our new mentor program. A lot of Title II has been used to kind of build up the robust mentor program. Title III covers our extended year ESL program, our ESL courses in the summer, curriculum development, and then Title IV provides an offset for Change is Simple for our buildings, so that was to reduce the cost of out-of-pocket at our buildings, as well as our DESA SEL screener. But again, we can do more through the subcommittee as we need to, but we go through the line by line of those in the fall.
And the last thing I would add is that one of the things that Ms. Young and I both have over the past few years encountered is that the grants are very strict and more so in recent years. What is an allowable expense? We go back and forth quite a bit with what can be allowed in the grant. And, again, the piece that we cannot supplant a budget is something that we hear again and again. And that's part of why it's a little bit challenging in budget season, because the grants aren't even actually approved until August. And I think that's, part of that is because the intention is not to supplant, but to supplement.
Thank you. Any other comments at this point?
Good.
Mr. Dizio?
Thanks, Alex.
All right, so Chapter 70, this is the primary state aid program for public schools. It basically establishes minimum spending requirements. And I'm going to briefly get into and I do mean briefly get into this calculation a little bit. It's a very complex calculation, but there's two main buckets that I think of. So there's the foundation budget, which basically is the number that sets the minimum amount that you have to spend. And this is based on student enrollment, demographics, takes into account student needs, whether they're low income, special education, EL learners. And what it does, it basically puts them in, I believe it's 13 different categories. And each category gets a set dollar amount, and they kind of do a weight of how much in each people you have in each category gets more money. You get more money for having kids with higher needs, EL learners, things of that nature. That ultimately establishes your foundation budget, the total that you have to spend. So if you take that and put it to the side for a second. The second piece is local contribution. This looks at property values, income wealth within each municipality. It basically speaks to how much of the property taxes can be used to fund education. That gap that exists is basically Chapter 70 state aid. So that's the number that basically districts get each year. So this next slide illustrates in Woburn historical spending for Chapter 70. I apologize for the numbers, but it is a 20-year gap there that we're covering. Couple big things to point out here. The first that I really want to note is the FY27 estimate, and again, this isn't set yet, but as of today, this is what it looks like. We will be getting a 2% increase in our state aid. I think this speaks very much so to the fact that we have students in populations such as low income, special ed, EL learners. The fact that this is going up, it shows that our foundation budget number is going up, and you'll see in a couple slides based on enrollment too, that supports that. The fact that this number is continuing to go up while enrollment admittedly goes down, certainly speaks to the need we have in those areas. The other thing to point out is you see highlighted in FY23, so this is the Student Opportunity Act, which actually increased the rates, particularly for those students in the higher needs populations, whether it's special ed, low income, EL learners, so it increased those rates. It was actually an act of FY19, but due to COVID, it got pushed back. Woburn received this funding in FY23, so you see a huge jump from 9 to 12 million there, and that's why. The next thing that I want to get into is to look at some enrollment trends. It's important to note, so the following slides that you're going to look at will illustrate enrollment based on October 1 numbers for each of the given years. So the first thing that we'll look at is the overall enrollment, and again, this is based on October 1st numbers. So if you look October 1st of 23 up until 24, you see a pretty big surge in student population. And while from 25 to 26, you do see that number coming down, a significant number, 193 students. It kind of levels off at the pre-surge baseline. So yes, it's coming down from its peak, but we still do have a relatively steady pre-surge population, I would say. This next slide looks at each of the different grade levels. So it looks at elementary, middle, and high school. Again, these are October 1 numbers. You'll see that the elementary school sort of bared the brunt of the fluctuation that we saw in late 2023. I think there was lots of discussion around redistricting about probably this exact situation, and the fact that you do again see the numbers drop from 25 to 26, but relatively in line with the pre-surge numbers of 23. And then if I could pick sort of one slide, particularly within the enrollment slides to have here, it would be this, and particularly the title of this. So while I think the tide has receded, the student complexity remains at historic highs. So the top line shows Woburn's population of students with disabilities as a percentage of the total student population. It's eye-opening to see that nearly 1 in 4 students now require specialized disability support. And again, this speaks to some of the Chapter 70 money where we're getting more money for having students that have higher needs. And yes, we do have enrollment coming down, but I think it speaks very much so to why this budget has so many asks. You'll see a lot of asks in the special education department. It's because we have nearly 1 in 4 students who require some sort of specialized disability support. On the point of the EL population, admittedly this as a percentage of the total student body is coming down from the high of 15.6 to 14.6. Compared to 2022, it's still, pretty high. I would say that we fundamentally have a higher baseline, to be honest. And one thing that I'll note is that, yes, we did take into account, I spoke about reallocating some positions here. And what we did do is we did reallocate some of the positions from the EL department into special education. You'll see that within the budget. I do want to look at, so we talked briefly about some of the changes we were able to make to reduce this budget. This is the this is the remaining FTEs. We started this, at 12. We're down to 6 FTEs that we're asking for. The 2 teachers, one of them is an additional classroom needed for the grade 5 RISE program. The second one is a Shamrock Bubble Room for the 4th grade. Then we get to the assistant director. I've said this, I think, several times now, but we have several seasoned maintenance workers that will be leaving us at the end of this fiscal year. And the current director is in need of assistance with his daily activities, compliance reporting, grants, capital planning, and just the day-to-day building maintenance and repairs that he does. The next one down is the assistant principal, and I know that I've spoken at length about having Wayne leaving us at the end of this year. I do think more than that.
Next year.
Next year.
What did I say?
Don't let
This
him go
year.
yet.
Don't get us too nervous.
This year.
2027.
Yeah.
2027, correct. Just making sure everyone was still with me.
There we go, yep, you paid attention.
Yeah, so currently this building has the highest percentage of special education students and the largest sub-separate special ed program. While a seasoned principal and veteran staff have really helped, keep that program running, I think it's important to get a second person in there. And it's one of only 2 schools in the district that doesn't have an assistant principal. So I think just to be equitable across the district, it is an ask that we should be doing. The nurse, this is at the Kennedy. We've spoken a lot about how there's 500 students at the Kennedy right now and only 1 nurse. And there's a lot of medical needs in terms of type 1 diabetics, seizure disorders. So this is, something that I think for safety of students that we need to make sure that we're putting a second nurse there. And then lastly, speech language, again, based on the need to fulfill required services for the student population and stay in compliance, we need to add a speech language pathologist. And then lastly, I promise I only have, I think, about 3 slides left. This is, when you're looking at this slide, you're looking at the $99.8 million for the total budget. And if you look, 76% of that or so is salaries. The next biggest components would be transportation, out-of-district tuition, and utilities, which ultimately leaves about 8% of the budget for supplies and materials, and then custodial, maintenance, and technology. And then this tells a similar story, but looks at the bucket of the 3.8 million year-over-year increase, or the 3.99%. Again, it's basically 93% of its salary, out-of-district tuition, transportation, and then utilities. The rest is supplies and services and support for facilities and technology.
Alex,
Yep.
may I interrupt for 1 minute on the out-of-district tuition? The circuit breaker supplement
Yes.
to that is $5,189,243. So just so that people understand, the tuition number is actually significantly greater. It is offset by a very robust circuit breaker right now. That's over $5 million.
Yep. We're going back. So really, in short, this budget aims to sustain our core commitments while making targeted and strategic improvements in developing a fiscally responsible budget. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Yes, Ms. Nagel.
I first just want to start out by saying just a huge thank you to you, Mr. Dizio. I know that I came into the Finance and Personnel Subcommittee with what seemed like an unending amount of questions. And not only did you show me patience and kindness in answering those questions, but seeing so many of those answers reflected in this presentation and in the updated spreadsheet, it, especially as a new committee member, it makes me feel seen and heard, which I think is very important. And a lot of these questions were also just coming from the public that they were raising to me. So I hope that the public that submitted so many of the questions that hopefully I relayed well also realizes that you saw and heard them too. So just a huge thank you. I know that, throughout the years you've also just been working through updating the spreadsheet and it's, it's only just a few $1 million that you have to handle every now and then, right?
A couple of them, yeah.
It's just pocket change. So just thank you. I had a couple of additional questions, if I can find them, as you were doing the presentation. Well, one, I wanted to invite us all to steer away from using the terminology EL, because it comes from a place of kids that are learning something because they lack something, whereas multilingual learners really showcases the fact that they already dominate a language. They're learning a second one, in some cases a third one. And then, so disorganized. Okay, here we go. It was with regards to what you were calling the baseline. How do we know when we're looking at the temporary enrollment surge and how, we went through that huge surge and now we're at around 4,327. How do we know that kind of this is going to be where we stabilize and that we're not on a declining trend? Like, is there any way for us to know that with any degree of certainty?
I would say I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, I know.
But if we could, I could tell you exactly what amount of this budget we need to the penny, and there would be no need to monitor it throughout the year, I guess. No, all kidding aside, I guess I don't have an answer for knowing like what's coming down the pipeline. We saw the SOI documentation, and we have some units coming in, and that's regardless of if we build a new school or not. So, yes, genuinely, that is a concern. We sit here in this room and we make our best guesses and do the best we can with the information that we have, I guess is what I would say.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a lot, so I'm willing to let anyone go before me. Okay.
Mr. Oliveira,
All right.
you have the floor.
So I spent a lot of time with this budget over the last few weeks, more time than I probably had planned on. But again, as Ms. Nagel said, there are a lot of concerns within the community. And while we don't necessarily dole out the money that goes to the schools, we just approve the budget. And it's our job to kind of ask the questions and get the information out there so that our colleagues at the City Council can make informed decisions when they're deciding whether this is the right amount for the schools to receive and, other departments as well. And I feel like many of my questions that I kind of sent off, they were answered tonight, which is fantastic. I appreciate it. But I do still have some lingering ones, more about just needing to know and try to understand.
Sure.
Like, what is this represented in the budget?
Yep.
So one of the questions that I have is on the horizontal movements that are at the elementary schools. What are we considering horizontal movements that can't be tied to another piece, like salary of a teacher? Like, what are we calling that? Is that a lateral move or?
So the horizontal moves are lane changes, right? So it's basically you have a teacher that, so every year by March 1st, they have to inform central office of their intent to move lanes. So if you had a teacher that's a master's, they would let us know that, hey, next year I believe that I'm going to be a master's 15. What I then do with that information is they're built into the budget as a master's, but the incremental change from a master's to a master's 15 is done as a horizontal move.
Yep.
And that's done on each individual tab. So if it were a teacher at the Alta Vista, that particular horizontal move is going to live at on the Alta Vista tab.
So it's just all grouped together for everyone who's making this lane shift?
Correct.
Okay. And then you talked about the lunch monitors, and so we now have 3 schools that, if it does happen, will not be in like the regular operating budget, and they'll be in the revolving budget. Is the plan to move those 3 schools, the Goodyear, Alta Vista, and Linscott, their lunch monitors to the operating budget in future years?
Yes, that'll be my plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we decreased the line item for not Northeast, Minuteman by 35,000 because no one's going there. Do we anticipate seeing an increase in the Northeast enrollment because Minuteman is just not an option for anyone?
We
or-
can't really get so many seats.
Yeah, as long as
Okay.
how many seats we get.
Okay, so we don't anticipate that. The assistant principal thing, that was addressed in the operating budget. I appreciate that. The advanced credit and tutoring, what is that considered for the line item in the operating budget?
Yeah, so this is sort of one of those quirky things. This is really horizontal moves for the middle and high school. I think it's just something that the terminology here, it predates me. Happy to change that. It is, I guess it is what it is. That's, again, I'm happy to change the terminology on that to be consistent, but it's really the same as horizontal
Okay.
moves.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that
Sure.
I'm understanding and people are understanding what these things are. And is it tied to the, like, when it references the tutoring, is it also tied to the $38 hourly
No,
rate in the
This
the
is strictly
contract?
horizontal move.
Okay.
So again, the same answer as before on the elementary level. It's really just that incremental increase.
Okay. Next one deals with like office supplies, instructional supplies. So clearly there is a difference of how many students are enrolled in each school, right?
Sure.
Probably the biggest one we can look at is the 2 middle schools.
Yep.
So there's more kids at the Kennedy than are at the Joyce. But when we look at the amount that's budgeted, it doesn't show really equity in the amount of supplies that are being given. I understand there are different programmatic needs at each school that might
Yeah.
have higher costs than others. That part I get. But it just seemed like if we were to break instructional supplies down per pupil, we're spending more at the Joyce than we are at the Kennedy, but the Kennedy has more students. So it just seems like inequitable that we're not getting the same amount of supplies budgeted at the school? Or
Yeah.
similar?
Yeah, so, I mean, I do see what you're saying. I'll say, like, for our process, we do a 5-year look back on usage of lines. We collaborate with building principals. Historically, for the most part, what they get, unless it's an outrageous ask or they, for some reason, couldn't rationalize it, they would get. In terms of doing a per pupil average, I guess we would need to establish sort of a dollar amount to give per pupil. Like, I don't know off the top of my head what that dollar amount would be that the committee would want to give for, say, the elementary versus the middle school versus the high school. If there's any weight given to, different programmatic needs. So I'm certainly happy to entertain that. I don't have the answer for what that per pupil number should be here today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I'm thinking of like, we're not necessarily going to fix some of these little nuances now, but for years going forward, it might make sense to really look at how we look at that number.
Can I provide just a little clarity on that one? So there's a few different things. So there was a baseline per pupil that was extended at the elementary school 5 years ago. At that time, that was when a few different things. One, we moved most of the elementary lines actually live now in the curriculum department because we do all of our main purchases. When we, instead of purchasing foundations at 7 elementary schools, we save money by purchasing foundations for the district out of one centralized. And so every year I adjust kind of in the central space and the elementary schools have the remaining. And we had done that as a per pupil initial. And then over the course of the next 5 years, the budgeting, decision making goes to building principals who come and ask for certain adjustments for certain reasons. And so from there, the per pupil might differ a little bit because we rely on the principals to look at their yearly spending, the things that they may have purchased one year and don't need to purchase for the next year, and we give them that allocation. And at the elementary level, you're not really looking at the building base a significant budget amount because most of that is done through, before they even come in September, this
curriculum department has purchased every single thing. That also for equity means that every single building has purchased all of the same materials for every single program. In terms of the middle schools, I would agree that they could be, and I think we're working towards that. I would say that in terms of the main core subject areas, those have been aligned over the past few years. But again, the decision making on terms of those budget amounts, we depend on building principals to look at the building based needs and make those decisions. And so I think that as we look forward into into the leadership of the middle schools, I think it's something that we certainly can share with them. But I would say that in terms of kind of how that is, we have kind of gone back, made those adjustments, but then every single year they make different purchases and they come forward and kind of make those recommendations of what they need, and that's what then starts to make them kind of, separate from each other. And we could go back at, I think, at the elementary level and go back to the per pupil amount, but if someone tells me I don't need the per pupil amount for next year, I just need this amount because I have all these extra things that I don't need to get, we want to rely on their knowledge of what their building needs.
Yeah, makes sense.
The other thing I would add, and you're probably going to say the programmatic.
Well, the Student Services Department funds an awful lot of supplies for students, whether it's the special education students or students that are on 504 plans. That is something that we routinely do, and we make sure that kids have what they need. And sometimes it's alphabet locks because a lot of students will struggle with the locks on the lockers. Sometimes it's separate materials. We often send standing desks into classrooms for students that have accommodations, and we try to do things in a way that the students feel as if they belong. So if I have 2 students in a classroom that need a standing desk, I might send in 4 or 5 desks so that it isn't, so that they fit in. And so a lot of supplies, I would say, when you consider the population, which is over 24% of students that have some sort of identified disability, and we work with the schools all the time in terms of, I every day I get I need X for this student because, of this reason, and it's, disability based. So I would say it's a little bit tricky. It's hard to do an apples to apples comparison. I certainly understand, and I agree. I think it's something we're really working towards because we want every student to have an equitable experience, but we often do supplement quite a bit.
Through the chair to Mr. Oliveira, can I ask a follow-up question on your question?
Sure.
Yes. I remember, Superintendent Crowley, that you had mentioned early on in the process how you bring the principals together to really understand kind of drafting the budget and hearing from each other. Might there be an additional opportunity, and maybe you're already doing this, so please stop me, but in breaking off, elementaries, with elementaries, the middle schools, and particularly thinking about the middle schools in this case, so that they can not only hear from each other on needs, but also on maybe cost-saving measures that they're implementing that may also be resulting in some of these differences in supply needs? Or have you not seen that be something that would be feasible? I'm
not totally sure I understand.
So you have mentioned that the way that you craft
Yes,
the budget
right,
is with
yeah,
everyone together,
yeah.
right?
We do meet individually as well. Is
Not
that what you're
individually.
asking?
So bringing actually the 2 principals from the middle school, for example, and having,
Yeah.
and with you,
Oh, yeah.
being able to talk through
we-
what cost-saving
yeah,
we went line by
measures
line.
they
Yeah,
might
we
be able
do.
to
We went line by line
Yeah,
with both
we go,
building principals.
yeah, so we.
Together,
Yeah,
okay.
so, yeah, it is a,
Yeah.
Okay.
so then, and one of the things that we've done over the past couple of years is go, before we even get to the next fiscal year, we live in that fiscal year and go line by line by line to see, because they need to justify what they're asking for
Yeah.
the next fiscal year. And we do that collaboratively by level, and then we share that out collectively as well.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Olivera. Thank you
I think
so
I only
much.
have 3 things more to ask. I think. So another small thing, you had mentioned the world language budget at the Kennedy was increased by 5,000.
Yeah.
But Joyce got an increase or proposed increase for this year of like 6,000, give or take. And so we know the Kennedy has more students than the Joyce. Why would the Joyce receive more? Is there something that we don't know collectively, that's not part of the budget development that would make sense that the Joyce is getting more because of this versus the Kennedy?
Sure. So as I mentioned, one of the structures that's been really important has been building in middle school teacher leadership structure with department heads. And this kind of original need started here at the Joyce around, again, now that we're holding kind of monthly meetings and with my department and with different department heads, was understanding that there had been over the past, however many years, there hadn't been an increase in the world language department. And again, just communication-wise, and that there was kind of some needs, some kind of updates that were wanted, so on and so forth. And so we put together kind of a, what are the things that we need that was brought from this building, which is what is the number that is there. At that time, then we met also with the department head at the Kennedy and kind of looked at what are the things that we needed to be consistent that both wanted, and what were the things that this building had wanted. And there were some things there that didn't necessarily that team felt like they needed for next year. And again, I'm relying on educators and the advocacy of the department leaders to tell me what the 2 buildings need. And so I didn't want to just make them the same if they didn't say that they needed the same things. And it's not necessarily like a more or less. It was more like I have this tool that I'm already using for that. I don't necessarily want that. Or it might be nice for me to take a look at it for next year. I think that this is kind of step 1 is like a catch-up space to kind of get us for next year. We do have through retirements and kind of step moving on, we're adding world language staff in both buildings next year. So that also provided us an opportunity to take a look next year and say, okay, what can we do within the 2 buildings? And again, some of those resources, for example, one of them is related to a Scholastic magazine where they were looking for this set and they were looking for that set. And so it came from the department leads in the 2 buildings on the needs. Okay. And again, if there's something that say, this one group wanted and they didn't buy there, this is why I am able to, within the curriculum department, also supplement within the buildings. If something came up and there's a need and they really want that thing next year, then certainly we're not, we can help support that, but it came from the group.
The last one, I'm going to take another one off. The last one is about the nurse position. I feel like we could talk about the other thing at a different time. Okay. The nurse position, so obviously the Kennedy needs another nurse because there are a lot of needs there with almost 500 students. The Joyce currently has 2 nurses, less students. Couldn't we theoretically move a nurse? No, we can't?
No, so I can answer that for you. When we talk about nurses, and I'll give you some data quickly. The Goodyear has 322 students with 2 nurses. The Harold Lyman, and this is a snapshot in time from, I probably pulled this a few weeks ago, 352 with 1.5 nurses, with some contractual support. The Joyce is 438 with 2 nurses and the medically fragile program. The Kennedy, 501, only 1 nurse. And I have 40 students that are either type 1 diabetics, seizure disorders, inhalers, or EPIs. 501, so it is a true safety concern. And currently, that's where I'm utilizing contractual services right now to make sure that they have staffing. But that is not the fiscally responsible way to do it. We need the nurse. The Malcolm White is 322 with 1. The Reeves is 471 with 2.5. The Shamrock is 302 with 1 plus contractual support. And the high school is 1199 with 2 and also additional support. So we look very carefully. The visits per day, the Kennedy is 24.2, which is the highest of all schools, and it has one nurse. So I think one of the things as a district is we've gradually been trying to increase nurses so that it wasn't several FTEs in one budget cycle, but really trying to get us into safer levels. And the Kennedy one, it's just time. We really can't wait any longer safely is the issue.
And a follow-up question to that. So needs at the Kennedy are high. Clearly, needs at the Joyce are also high.
Yes.
Do we anticipate needing to add an additional portion of FTE of a nurse at the high school in the coming years as these students move up?
So part of the balance, no, because we have a medically fragile program at the high school. Part of the balance is sort of tracking some of the more intensive students and watching them, and that really is what we try to do through. And again, this is where your IDEA grant comes in place. If we need to bring a nurse on as a resource nurse for a year, that's something that we will utilize. We look at the medical disabilities that the students have. Sometimes it's not uncommon to have a student move in and to need a one-to-one nurse. And you know, those are the pieces that we look at. Our director of nursing, Sarah Lee, is exceptional, and we keep very close data, and we watch it very carefully. But we do absolutely not have extra support with respect to nursing. And again, we're watching it carefully, and we are supplementing with contractual services for the areas that are of concern. I think one of the larger challenges is absences, field trips, et cetera. It is constantly creating the need for additional hands, and that's where it really is a day-to-day juggling activity. But so I hope that's helpful. But
Yeah, I just want to make sure that people who look at our budget and say, well, why do we need this? Because even myself, I have limited data. I have the same data that everybody else has. So getting these questions answered is important for people to understand the why. Why do we need it? Why do we need it now? Why didn't we need it years ago? And what's going forward.
It's very data driven. I mean, while the Joyce has 438 students, they have the medically fragile program, and I can tell you between type 1 seizure, daily meds, inhalers, and EPIs, they're at almost over 30 students. So.
Thank you. I think I have no more questions at the moment.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, looking at this budget, obviously the IT department, it should have been brought up, I'm sure you, it's just the increase here, again, if you want to, who wants to speak about the administration especially, replacing the Chromebooks, I assume.
Can I ask what particular line you're looking at?
The tech department hardware, repair, replace, access from 115 to 254. I know that, it's a big number, but I think the public would like to know that it's time to get new Chromebooks, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. There was a question at some point too about like working collaboratively with the city, and this was through WUSTAT, a question that, or a concept that came up of moving the Chromebooks out of capital and into the operating budget. So rather than do this every year with capital funds, we're going to be doing this, I think, on a rolling basis. So yes, this is moving Chromebooks from capital. This represents 250 student and 150 staff devices for FY27 Chromebooks.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation from Mr.
Yeah, no, he did. Alex answered it. Mr. Dizio answered it very well. What I would say is that we, in 2020, purchased Chromebooks for everybody in the district due to the pandemic, and that's why this will be a recurring expense in the operating budget. So just to be, there's a life. What do they call it? Life
Planned
cycle?
obsolescence.
Lifespan, life
Useful
expectancy
life, yeah.
of useful life of the Chromebooks. So we have to plan for that.
And a follow-up question to that, I don't know, it was explained to me a couple of meetings ago, and I still don't quite get it. I know Ms. Chisholm said that each facility director has asked for an assistant for many, many years. It didn't come. I appreciate Mr. Burnham, his crew, to do excellent work. But the assistant director to Mr. Burnham, and we have several seasoned maintenance workers retiring, the director is in need of assistance with daily work, including compliance reporting, grants, capital planning, and general building maintenance and repairs. Again, I know the mechanical guys are leaving. Somebody had an explanation a while ago how this is better than putting that 130. And again, someone's been here a long time. Each and every time we try to get a mechanic for HVAC. We try to get an electrical person. Nobody wants to work for that money. I just need to explain to me again why the facilities director, instead of putting that money aside, allocating it to the mechanical people that, again, we just heard it from the SOI, these buildings are in dire need of repairs and maintenance and upkeep. I just don't see the idea of really not replacing mechanical guys. And I'm not sure, I haven't really, this job description doesn't really explain the totality of the assistant director.
I think to try to answer at least part of your question, the mechanical workers are based on union contracts, so we couldn't just take a set number and throw that at them. It has to be, they come in on step, and that's where they have to be, based on the number of years they're here, or if they have licensure or not, they would come in on a different step, but we couldn't just bring them in wherever we wanted them to. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I just thought in the past, has been, well, we had someone interview, they came in, great resume, great experience, great everything, but they wanted more money to work here because they can make a whole lot more. Mr. Toro's over there reminding me of these things, what they can make on the outside, as, obviously the school benefits and the contract, I understand all of that. But I just need to hear the rationale of the assistant director as opposed to more mechanical people. If anybody can answer that.
Yeah, I can.
I'm fine with it, for tonight. We can bring it back at the public hearing perhaps, but I just, anybody?
So are you asking the rationale for the assistant director?
Well, kind of both. The people, we don't know they're coming in. When those guys leave, they're going to be placed at a rate. What's their rate going to be if they can be replaced? Is my question.
Oh, so I guess
It's a contract.
whatever. We negotiate that with the SEIU. So I think what you're asking, what do we have? An HVAC position open for quite a while with the right. So the idea was somebody in the private sector, HVAC, could make $100,000 if they were to come and work for the Woburn Public Schools because of the contract. We have to bring them in at $65,000. I'm making these numbers up to be clear.
I've been there.
And so that we are contractually obligated to do that. And so we've been fortunate to have the facilities people we've had for so long. And so,
I'm just afraid by losing those people, will the next person come in at contracted rate, or will we be back here again saying, we tried, we have to bump that up to get a good HVAC or a good electrician or a good maintenance person again?
we may have to, but that would be done through the contractual
It would have to be
process.
negotiated.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
Can I?
the assistant director, it's in there now, it's going to go to the public hearing, but I don't really. So is this person going to be doing the repairs, or is he writing grants with Lenny, or is he?
So the rationale for the assistant director ask is, Lenny is the director of the facilities department. He has no one to work in conjunction with him. I think about it candidly. It's one of the things that keeps me up at night. If something were to happen to Lenny, who do I call if something happens in our buildings? There's no answer. And so when I think of what happens in a day-to-day, yesterday at the Malcolm White, I walked in for the principal interviews. Lo and behold, I walked into the principal office to get a drink, seltzer, and
Thanks for clarifying.
yeah. Lenny was there. I was surprised to see him, but he got a call because there was something wrong with the bathroom at 6:30 at night, and his wife was with him because they were on their way to dinner. And so, as a real example of things that happen all the time, I can't tell you the number of alarms that go off at 2 and 3 in the morning throughout the district. That if the custodian doesn't pick up, it goes to Lenny. Lenny's out at 3 in the morning, multiple times per week. He is actively engaged in the safety and security. He's on the citywide task force.
Nothing against Lenny or the
No,
current crew that he has working with him, so.
I'm not saying it's against Lenny. I'm trying to provide rationale for all of the things that happen. And so our job is to keep these buildings up and functional and running. And I think it's a capacity building move to have some support. We are, to his credit, he's actively seeking green community grants. That's not something that falls into his lane necessarily. We are upgrading our camera system. That's something that Lenny is overseeing. And so there are only so many hours in a day and so many things that one person can humanly do. And I think that's the rationale.
Can I add to that? One of the things that Alex mentioned in his presentation was that the special education population was over 24%. And one of the things that we see in Woburn that I do think is somewhat unique to Woburn is our programs are very large. We have students that have very significant needs. And, we talk a lot about the RISE program. The RISE program is very large right now. We could look at the GAIN program that didn't exist in the high school 3 years ago, and we now have 30 students in it. Our programs, our SOAR program, which we have, is, again, just over the past couple of years, is a very full program. And one of the things that has also happened with this increase in higher population of students that have very significant needs is the requests on the facilities department. And Mr. Mulrennan, just for a little bit of context, we often work with Lenny and need his assistance. And it could be things like building a special cubicle for a child that has self-injurious behavior. Or we have students that need a calming space and the pads are coming off the wall and we have to find a safe way to keep them on the wall for the student. We often have plumbing issues related to students with special needs that maybe need toileting assistance. There is the special education department, I really do think has really increased the demands on the facilities department significantly, and they're often not straightforward problems. I think that's another piece of it, is we often are sitting down trying to problem solve on what we can do so that this child can stay in the least restrictive setting and be safe. And they've done a really, a good job with it, but I would say it's definitely something that has changed over the past few years, is the amount of requests and things that we really need support and assistance with for these kiddos.
And so I think Mr. Mulrennan, so what I'm hearing, and I don't know, because you had a question too, besides that Lenny is awesome, why they're enumerating these things is because he is doing way more than one person should, and that's why he needs an assistant. Besides, he can't be in two places at once. So, and if we can't fill an HVAC position and it's just going to sit there, why not use it for something useful, I think is the take-home message. Did you have any other questions?
I'm all set, thank you.
Ms. Nagel.
Yeah, if I understood Mr. Mulrennan's question, I think it speaks to something that I brought up in the finance subcommittee that I'd like to bring up now too. I think it's on how we're wording things, right? Because if we're talking about, for example, if we're talking about needing an assistant principal because we have a principal that's retiring, that's not the reason, right? We don't need an assistant director for facilities because we can't fill these other mechanical and maintenance positions. We need this assistant director because we need them desperately to support the many, many needs that exist through our, everything from our special needs students to just the aging facilities that we have throughout the district. Am I understanding your comment and your question?
You're fine,
correctly?
I'm getting it.
Okay. And so I just think that in general, what I see is we have such a robust budget, and if we can communicate through those notes on that budget spreadsheet what we mean by these things and our reasoning for why we are requesting that our residents pay more for the exemplary education that I know we are providing our students, then it just makes the process easier for everyone, right? And it's a matter of adding a lot of those notes that Mr. Dizio has now been adding so that we're all understanding why do we need this assistant principal? Why do we need this assistant director? Where did the lunch monitors go? You know, what's being funded through what? And it makes it easier also for just the public to follow where we're spending the money, why we're spending the money, and to come along with us for the ride so that we can, as a community, come together around a budget and feel proud of the outcome of what we're doing. Because I think there's so much to be proud of about what we're doing, and we are truly, in many ways, paving the way. We have risen to the challenge of needs, not as a problem, but as an opportunity to show what Woburn is capable of. And that's incredible. And if we can just tell that story a little bit better, I think we're just going to have an easier time as a community and you know, once we present to City Council and beyond. So.
Thank you, Ms. Nagel. Ms. Chisholm and then Ms. Wetzel.
I just have on the dues and seminars, and I know that at the elementary school, there's principal and assistant principal, but there's some schools that have both that are only $250, and I know that's usually contractual.
It's contract. Let's see. I think that's one of the items that we would look at with the principal and see if they've gone.
All right.
Year after year.
I just don't want to run on all of a sudden realize we didn't do 3 of them.
Yeah.
Because like the Herald Lyman is higher than all of them. So I don't know if they just attend more or if there's something that they go to.
So in that case, I can tell you that Dr. Kent, the assistant principal, has gone to some seminars that other people have not.
Okay. All right. I just didn't want to run into trouble where it was contractual and wasn't. And then the parent transportation went up this year?
Yes. It did go up. We have more and more parents that are electing to transport, and we are required to reimburse them the federal mileage rate, which has also continues to go up.
Okay.
And so that's why.
All right, because I figured that, but I just want to make sure. And the new principals that we are hiring, will be hiring, or in the midst of hiring, those numbers going to fit into what we budgeted? We won't have a problem with that? So hopefully?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be okay.
Because I just want to make sure that that's happening. And I just, and as far as like Lenny's assistant or whatever we want to call him, the city just hired the exact same thing last June. So if they do it on the city side, we have more square footage, I believe, than they even do. So I think it's well worth it. My little plug for Lenny's help.
Thank you, Mrs. Chisholm. Ms. Wetzel.
Yes, first of all, it's been said, but thank you for all the hard work, Mr. Dizio. Fantastic job, Dr. Carl, your team. I know a lot of work has gone into this, and thank you to the community members who've either asked questions today or sent emails. I think it's really important how engaged everyone is, and I think it helps make the process that much better, and it helps us make a better budget. And I think we've seen a lot of that reflected here today. And to Ms. Nagel's questions at Finance, they were tremendous, and I know they were coming from the community and from yourself, so I appreciate and applaud you for doing that. And to something Ms. Nagel said, in terms of we don't have a crystal ball to predict the enrollment, I do think, and we mentioned it in the SOI, we can continue that work with Mr. Quinn on the building side, so that can, you know, it's not a crystal ball, but we can certainly help us predict ish new students that might be coming. Well, it doesn't tell us students that might be leaving, but I do think that's sort of a small indicator of change. Mr. Oliveira, you mentioned the school supplies, and I mentioned this in finance, and Mr. DeZio, I realized I owe you a connection email, but the Lions Club receives donations once a month from Amazon, and not that we can say what's going to come in them, but oftentimes, or I'm not going to say oftentimes, sometimes there are school supplies and things like that, so I'm wondering if that's something we can piggyback off of to maybe help offset some of the supply line. Certainly doesn't hurt, but I will absolutely send that connection email probably tomorrow. And then we also talked a little bit about this at finance, but making a F&Q of like commonly asked questions. It doesn't have to be the ones that were asked here today. I'm more thinking like, what's an FTE? What's a step in lane? Like things the community might not necessarily know. That would help them better understand this document as they're looking at it. I think that would just be really helpful, and that can just live on our website, and people can go and ask it, and then that then helps maybe less questions that we might get that people can answer themselves. So I think it could be a win for everybody. And then also for the community, we do have finance subcommittee meetings that happen basically every other week. The budget's not always on there, but when it is, please, you're welcome to come to any of our subcommittee meetings. And it's a great way to learn a bit more about the process and kind of just better understand how things work. So you're always welcome, and those are posted on our city website and on our WPS site. So I don't really have any other questions, just more comments and things. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wetzel. Mr. Oliveira,
Just
one
kidding,
more
I
time.
have a few more. So, as somebody who works in a public school district that has building subs, it is a little disheartening to see that that was removed, because I know, for me, many times somebody doesn't pick up my specific job. So then, if we didn't have building subs, then we would have to scramble, probably through specialists that have extra prep periods in the day to fill this with many different adults as opposed to one singular person. Is there a concern that we remove that as a request and increase the sub-teaching line by $100K, that potentially could be something that we overspend in?
So the intent is to have a daily sub at every school. And so that really emanates from the elementary principal request when we're talking about it, because what the the daily subs, we were trying to keep them to a 19-hour-a-week type position that wouldn't work as well as having a daily sub every day at every school. And so that's operationally what the principals thought might work best. Because to your point, it would be nice to know that you're going to have the same person show up every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the goal.
And then my last thing, I promise, unless something jumps in. So this proposed budget, few $100,000 short of $100 million, right? And so we know that COLA is not listed in here because that's going to get negotiated. Is there like an estimate if COLA was 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, that we could give out to community members that this is the economic impact of a COLA of 1%, 2%, 3%, just so we have numbers to work with, that they can see, okay, it's not really going to be, if this is approved by City Council as is, not actually going to be $99,789,923. It's going to be this, given these different scenarios.
Sure. So I can say that number has historically lived on the city side. That being said, I'm happy to do whatever it is the committee wants. It isn't necessarily as straightforward as, of course, taking just 1%. Even those like horizontal moves that we spoke about earlier, those incrementally would go up, whether the increase was a 1%, 2, 3, 4, whatever that number becomes. Yeah. So it's certainly something that could be done. It would be a little bit of work, but just I wanted to mention that it has historically lived on the city side.
Yeah, because I was trying to do some rough numbers myself, like looking at the contract and seeing the stipends. If it's a 2% COLA, they get 0.5% of that added to it. Like there are a lot of details in it, but just so that there's some type of here's the economic impact in addition to this, just to get an idea. So.
Madam Vice Chair.
So through the chair to Ms. D'Oliveira, so the city council doesn't approve this. What we do is we give this to the mayor takes this and puts it in the city budget, and in that city budget, there will be a placeholder of some sort of number that is delegated towards the settlement of contracts, and that's usually what happens, just like health insurance is held on the city side.
Yeah.
So we have historically put it in our budget. We've been like, okay, let's put $750,000 on the school side. And then it's been like, well, why? Because it should be held where all of the revenue is coming in, where the purse strings are held on the city side, and that benefits us because we're looking at a 3.99 budget and not a 6.75 budget, right? So that's always been how it's done, and we've just been very open with the fact that this does not include those adjustments that may come down, but it will be paid out of the city side. So in the city budget, there should be something that represents that, whatever that number is that the mayor comes up with on his side, and that will be in the budget. So they won't be approving this. They're approving the mayor's recommendation, hopefully matching this. Exactly.
I'm assuming that everything is going to be agreed upon as is.
Usually is.
I'm just curious to have that,
Yes.
like a number somewhere that can be referenced by the community.
Yeah, and we've done it before, but it's been like superfluous because we don't hold that authority at the end of the day.
Yep.
Right? We would only be guesstimating, and that's not really a good way of, passing budgets. But could I be heard now?
Of course.
Basically, two questions. For the assistant principal at the Shamrock, is that an immediate hire, or do you think that's going to be a January hire?
Pardon me. I'd like it to be an immediate,
Okay.
for next school year, for
Yeah,
the beginning
that's
of
what I
next school year,
meant.
yes.
Okay. And during the presentation, when we were learning about Chapter 70 and the importance of collecting that enrollment data, I really just want to loop back to how important it is to have a central registrar and how good of an investment that is. Because without that, we might not capture all of that data in the first place, which plays a huge role in the number that we receive in Chapter 70 money. So clearly a good return on investment there. I had a question about the bubble room at the Shamrock. If we had redistricted, would we need that bubble room if we had gone through the redistricting process versus buffer zone?
I need to think about it a little bit. So the proposed redistrict was to alleviate more of kind of programmatic, because the redistrict would have alleviated pressure points from the Hurled Lyman to make it so that we could have moved the entire Rise 2 program over. And so what made the enrollment go at the Shamrock, we have intended for it actually to be a building that would in the future be able to manage bubbles, because we have certain buildings that are going to be bubble managers.
True.
And that when we are able to alleviate space, ECP included, the Shamrock is a centralized building in which we could kind of plan for the bubbles. And so it's a building that we've kind of known could live in that space, because that's the only way to alleviate pressure from the Goodyear. And the program is not necessarily at the moment, is not what's making the enrollment go over at that grade level.
Okay.
What really the redistrict would have done was it would have made it so that when we're now having to have bubbles at the Shamrock, we wouldn't have to worry about additional space that would be taking, as well as it would put an entire program together. And I think what the larger concern is just that it creates at the Shamrock right now a very large special education population, compared to its peers. We know one of the reasons we've talked with the SOI is that that our buildings that have 3 classrooms are better suited for larger programs.
Right.
And so by having double programs, it creates other things.
Yeah.
But the redistrict itself would not have necessarily alleviated that per se. But I can't say for sure, because we
Right.
would have been, we would have been moving students.
I understand. Okay.
It may have made us so that we weren't as close to the bubble, right? But I would have to look at students and look where everybody lives and all of that to answer with full certainty.
Right.
But really, the goal of that was, one, to make more equitable class sizes, recognizing that the Malcolm White has our most declining enrollment, so that's where right now we have the most space for students, and so like
Right.
the redistrict is aiming to solve like many problems at once.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that problem itself would have been, because the Shamrock is designed to become a bubble room school in the long term.
Which is great.
Yep.
Which
We're
is
going to
very
have some
positive.
buildings that have to be those fluctuating schools yearly.
I say this because I just get concerned about, when I hear about bubble rooms being
Yeah.
used at the Shamrock and the Reeves because of the programmatic pressures in those
Yeah.
particular schools and with the ECP.
I do want to clarify, and again, I don't know where the question has come from, there's ones that have come. There is no bubble room at the Harold Wyman next year.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, I feel like I heard that question.
It was in an email.
Yeah, and I just wanted to confirm there is no Harold Wyman bubble. The only bubble room in the district is at the Shamrock.
Wait, when you say that, do you mean that all of the rooms are being used and there's no extra bubble room?
There's 18 classrooms, so we're no longer at 19. We're at 18 now at the Harold Wyman for the fall.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why we're able to move a little bit more
Okay.
of the RISE program.
I
over.
understand what you're saying.
But we weren't able to move by not moving components of the Harold Wyman. However, I will, to your point, I meet regularly with Ghislaine Pinto, the central registrar. We're constantly looking right now and monitoring new enrollments, really looking at kind of where new enrollments are coming, and, seeing what we could do through buffer zones if needed for the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other question I had is something that comes up in budgets. It hasn't come up in a couple of years, but Medicaid reimbursement. So, where are we with that? I know that comes back to the general fund.
It does, right. So,
Yeah.
and Maureen's going to answer the question. I see her leaning into her microphone, so I'm just going to stop.
I knew Dr.
and let-
Ryan had some info on this.
The Medicaid reimbursement goes to the city. And I will say Medicaid reimbursement is a lot of work for everybody involved.
Yes.
And we're actually in the process of working with a different company effective July 1st, trying to see if we can increase that money a little bit. So it is something that we look at carefully. It gets very complicated because the added paperwork and time required to properly document the services so that you are within the guidelines, it's very, very tedious. And so it's a trade-off between, do we want our related service providers seeing our kids versus how much time do we want them filling out paperwork to bring in this reimbursement. And so we've really tried to sort of find the sweet spot and to work with companies to maximize the reimbursement. But it is something that we look at regularly, and the money does go straight into the city.
Yeah. I appreciate you talking about that balance as to how tedious it is, and it's money, so it's worth it, but is it?
Right, and there's also, you also have to work with your families too, to make sure that they understand that component of it.
Yes.
I mean, there's various issues.
Oh, I can imagine. I think signing that form is a difficult thing
Yes.
to do.
Yes.
And I can understand 100% why.
Mhm.
So, okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
And do we ever get a number on that comes back, like for our information, that how much the reimbursement is?
So I could bring to you, in fact, why don't I bring that to the next SSA meeting?
Nice.
I can gather the numbers. And again, it doesn't come to us.
Well, that's my point, I guess.
Yes, but I can certainly bring that to the next meeting so that you can see what's come in over I believe it's a quarterly payment, but I'm happy to share that.
Okay, thank you. Was there any other questions, comments, concerns?
Oh, I just want to say that I'm for this budget, and I really appreciate administration squeezing the lemon. I think it did a really good job, and I am fully in favor of it. So, thank you.
That being said, do I have a motion to send this to public hearing?
So moved.
Should we, the 3.99 increase, or how should we word the motion?
Okay, so we will send our budget this year we will approve this budget to be sent with a 3.99% increase totaling in $99,789,923.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Ms. Crowley.
Madam Chair, I think this budget is ready to be presented to the public at a public hearing, and I'm in full in favor of it.
Phenomenal. Any other QQTs? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We will send this to public hearing. We will have it on our website and at the library and
City Hall.
And at City Hall for your viewing pleasure. All right. Moving on.
Moving along.
So subcommittee policies that we have tabled and discussed and now are ready for action. Guess, would somebody like to make a motion to?
I'd like to make a motion to to approve. I'd like to make a motion. No one is whispering in my ear. I totally know what to say. I'd like to make a motion to approve the policies.
Don't we remove
Do I
them
have
from
to
the
make
table
one?
first?
I don't, is that?
Move them and then vote them? Because they've been tabled.
I'd like to make a motion to remove from the table policies BDEB, BDEC, BDED, BDEE, BDEF, BDEG.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, do I have a motion for approval?
I have a motion to approve the policies which I already mentioned.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
One quick thing, just these, what we're referring to are subcommittees.
I was going to say them.
Oh, okay.
And so, to clarify, we have BDEB, Subcommittees of the School Committee Finance, BDEC, Subcommittees of the School Committee Policy, BDED, Subcommittees of the School Committee Curriculum and Data Trends, BDEE, Subcommittees of the School Committee Student Services and Achievement, BDEF, Subcommittees of the School Committee Resources and Capital Planning, and BDEG, Subcommittees of the School Committee Community Relations. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Just additional discussion.
Yes.
Just to further clarify that these are the policies that basically reign on how we do the subcommittees. So these policies guide the work of the subcommittees, what is discussed in subcommittees, how it is discussed, and other matters about each of those unique subcommittees.
So we had one for finance from the charter, and then that was it, and so, or bylaws. And so, yes, we decided to make that more robust. Any more discussion on this motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda is discussion items from the Policy Subcommittee. Ms. Nagel, would you like to take it away?
I would love to take it away. All right, so, well, maybe I would love to take it away with 1 second, if you will spare me.
So I will say that what we have on the agenda here is IKF, Graduation Requirements, IKFE, Competency Determination, ADDA-E-3, Query Request Form, ADDA-R, Query Requirements, BEC, Executive Sessions, BEDD, Rules of Order, BEDF, Voting Method, and BEDG, Minutes. Ms. Engel.
Yes, and so we had tabled these last time, and would we like to go one by one, or just bring up what we did for
Anybody
each
has
one?
a question.
If anyone has a question or anything to discuss on any of these policies.
I know that a lot of work was put into the competency determination and graduation requirements.
Yes, and perhaps just to add to that, so what we did with that, there used to only be one policy, IKF, and what we did is, in accordance with MASC, we have split the contents of AKF graduation requirement into two separate policies, one that is graduation requirement, AKF, and one that is competency determination, AKFE, and to those have added just additional information on how these are done, and it doesn't change the process or any of the ways that we have been currently operating. This is just more reflective of how we've been doing competency determination and how we've been meeting graduation requirements and talking through graduation requirements, and will be in alignment with MASC.
Excellent. And I do note, I believe ADDA-E-3 query request form was for removal per the
Correct.
policy subcommittee, but the other ones were for adoption, updating.
Yes, so ADDE3 and
ADDA.
Yep, only ADDE3. You're right.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. All right, well, if there's no other discussion, we can put these on the agenda for the next meeting for action. Next, we have for tabling BDEA Personnel Subcommittee of the School Committees. This was a late add, so now we are looking to table that, if anybody has action on that.
Mrs. Chisholm nailed it again.
Honestly.
It's tough when I have so many committees to take charge of.
Well, perhaps Ms. Chisholm would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we put BDA on the table until our next meeting for discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Because it's so different than all the others.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. Finally, in our reports and presentations, we have the open meeting law complaint. So we received, I guess I will speak to it. We just received a complaint regarding minutes and not following open meeting law. So I have scheduled a workshop with the MASC Field Director, Alicia Mallon, to go over OML, not just with the chair of the Finance Personnel Subcommittee, which the complaint requests they be retrained in OML.
It was finance, wasn't it? Was it personnel too?
Personnel and Finance Subcommittee is what the request says. So, not all members will be able to make it, but I think a good amount can, and so I think that will be helpful, even for our new members, always a refresher. So that will be May 6th at 7:30 here at the school committee room. That will be a posted open meeting because we will be a quorum.
Here we go.
Any
I'll try to make it.
questions, comments, concerns? I will find you, and I will hunt
Make a
you.
motion to send the complaint to council for review.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to subcommittee reports. Finance and/or Personnel Subcommittee.
We did meet. I do not have my minutes, but I do have warrants that I would like to make a motion that we approve the warrants. Warrant 1 was for $1,772,993.88. Warrant 2 was for $152,597.33, and warrant 3 was for $597,630.44. We just need a motion to get those paid.
Motion to approve those three
Second.
ones.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The
And
ayes
then
have
the
it.
balance of accounts. Make a motion that we approve the balance of accounts.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? The ayes have it.
There you go, we get to pay the bills.
Do you have another meeting scheduled?
I have to talk to Alex, we
Very
just want
good.
to see what happened tonight before we.
Phenomenal.
Want to give administration a break if they can possibly breathe.
Community Relations Subcommittee. Michael Milrennan, Chair. not met. And curriculum and data trends,
No meeting.
no
since our
need.
last one.
Policy subcommittee,
Yes. Okay, so we met on April 1st at 8 a.m. in the conference room here, and we discussed ADDA query requirements, which I just want to bring this up, that it will be changing title because it is not reflective of the content that is within that policy. It doesn't only include query requirements, it also includes SAFIS, thank you, which is the state criminal record. Yeah, it's basically, the state level query. So to be reflective of that and also to be in alignment with MASC, we will be changing the title. So if you see that title change, we're still talking about the same policy. We reviewed last edits, no discussion was had, and unanimously we voted to send it to the full committee to review ahead of tabling. With ADDA E1, similar process. This is for information concerning the process in correcting a criminal record. We reviewed the last edits, no discussion was had, and we voted unanimously to send it to the full committee to review ahead of tabling. ADDA E2, which is also called query requirements, which will also be changing title to background check requirements. The recommendation was that we review and we adopt it, so we reviewed the last edits, no discussion was had, and we voted to send it to the full committee to review ahead of tabling. We also talked about IMGB, which would be the new therapy dogs in school policy. We reviewed the last edits, no discussion was had, and we voted to send to the full committee to review ahead of tabling. With BDFA school councils, we reviewed and discussed. The action taken was that the superintendent has shared the policy with each school principal for their review. I shared that it would be best to consider feedback from the school councils, including each school principal, so that the policy is guided by the practice and the constraints of each school. And this is just important to bring up because each school might have a different both appetite and ability and capacity to be meeting. And so making sure that the policy is reflective of that and is not instead forcing folks to be meeting with more regularity than is actually possible is important, as well as what the school councils are able to oversee and do. We voted unanimously in the subcommittee to keep it for tabling and to review any edits and additions from school councils and principals at the next subcommittee meeting. For JLCD, this is the new policy on administering medicines to students. It would, just as a review of what we went over last time, it really would expand the ability that non-nursing staff have to administer medications. And this would be huge because in many instances, a nurse has to be present for certain medications to be administered for the first time, even by trained professionals who are not nursing staff. And I mean, these minutes as you're waiting for a nurse could potentially be lethal. And so we were very excited to hear from our director of nursing on these updates. And there was no discussion this time around. We voted to table in subcommittee to review any edits and additions from Special Education District Counsel Mike Joyce at the next subcommittee meeting. We talked about BEDK, which is reporting school committee meeting minutes. We agreed to just strike the policy after starting to make some edits, just because the policy is now pretty irrelevant given how we actually communicate and how we report school business. And we voted unanimously to send to full committee to review ahead of tabling. For BHD, school committee communications with the public, we made some additional edits, and we discussed that it should be the school committee that is responsible for addressing communications from the public, in particular the chair, in coordination with the superintendent, and we voted to send to the full committee to review ahead of tabling. BIA, new school committee member orientation. We reviewed and made additional edits. We discussed that the existing policy didn't actually provide any guidance on providing training and orientation completion. And so that as new members, when we do complete the mandated training, we should be providing a certificate of completion to the superintendent's office. And we voted to send this to the full committee to review ahead of tabling. KCD, public gifts to the schools. The superintendent is forwarding this to Special Education District Council, Mike Joyce, for review. No further discussion was had, and we voted to table it in subcommittee for review, to review the edits by Mike Joyce. BDFAE, school improvement plans. We reviewed and made some edits. I highlighted that the deadline for approving the school improvement plans did not match current practice, and the superintendent not only concurred, but really illustrated for us how difficult it is to actually meet the set timeline that exists in the policy, because we don't actually have any data by then to actually be able to...
MCAS data.
MCAS data, correct. To actually be able to inform these school improvement plans. And so moving instead the deadline to November 1st would allow for the school improvement plans to be guided by the most updated student performance data. And we voted to table in subcommittee to review at the next subcommittee meeting. In terms of other policy-related business, school committee member Ellen Crowley shared the new seclusion policy known as 603 CMR 46.00, which is the prevention of physical restraint and requirements if used. It's going to come into effect on August 17th of this year, and it's going to present a major shift in the way schools across Massachusetts give timeouts to kids. This would entail changes in the behavioral plans in our programs. In addition to that, I brought up and suggested that we make all full committee and subcommittee meetings hybrid. We had a robust discussion around this, and some of the concerns that were brought up by other members were, what if someone can't hear when they're dialing in online? What if the internet drops? What if the link doesn't work? Who holds or is responsible for the link? Members shared the importance of public comment also being used consistently in subcommittees and in line with the topics and agenda of the individual committee, the individual subcommittee. And members proposed discussing hybrid meetings at the full committee meeting, which is what I am doing now. And further discussion needs to be had. And then in terms of public comment, we had public comment submitted via email from Ms. Rachel Kuberry, talking about how the school council policy was on the agenda, but there had not been any, no one had reached out to the school councils to elicit feedback regarding the policy, and that she would really like to ensure that this happens, which we then addressed. And Ms. Bernice Friedman spoke about the importance of the policy subcommittee meeting, perhaps moving into a hybrid setting, because the 8 a.m. timing of the meetings make it difficult for working parents and guardians who are dropping off their children at school in the morning or driving to school to participate in person. And we elevated those. We adjourned at 9 a.m. and our next meeting will be this Friday, April 17th at 8 a.m. in this conference room.
All right, and so are you going to make a motion regarding tabling the
Yes.
ones that you mentioned?
Yes. Do I have a motion to table? Do I have to say all of them? No.
All of the previously mentioned.
All of the previously mentioned policies for tabling.
You make the motion.
You can make the motion.
Yes.
I am making the motion.
I am making the motion to table all of the previously mentioned policies.
Excellent. And we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Those are tabled. All right. Resources.
We have not met.
And student services.
We did meet. Sorry, I'm going to have to read from my phone. My computer died. So we met on 3/25 at 5 p.m. in this room. In attendance were myself, Mr. Oliveira, and Dr. Ryan, and Mr. Mulrennan was absent from that meeting. We did offer public comment, but we didn't have anyone that day. My notes start with a link from Dr. Ryan that just summarizes her updates on special education, and we went into our special education update. So staffing update, we have one psychology opening. We've hired one since our last meeting, and we are continuing to hire for ESY, or Extended School Year Program. Program updates. So the RISE program continues to have high enrollment, and the current kindergarten class is still looking high. And like we do every year, administration will project out future needs and manage those in the short term. As we saw in our budget, we have the need for another RISE teacher. ECP update, which I provided last meeting, but I do think it's important to provide again. But we are offering new program models for our early childhood program, or ECP. So currently our ECP program is a SPED program, and it fluctuates with enrollment, and there's specific needs that each student on an IEP has. As a result, there's several different schedules in place, including a fully sub-separate program, a half-day inclusion program, or an extended day services or drive-in services, and fully integrated models as well. In this instance, IEP teams determined that certain students required additional integration, which will allow some typical peers to remain at the school a little longer in the new peer models, which I'll list here. So we have new peer models for the 2026-2027 school year, and these will be looked at every year as the needs of the building will change, because again, this is a special education program. And our current schedule for our peer model is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. The dates I'll go into shortly. And we have multiple scheduling options, which provides flexibility for families. And with these new peer models that we'll talk about, families will review the options and they'll rank choice, which one works best for their lifestyle. And if there's more families interested than the number of spots allow in the program, there will be a lottery system to determine the students that will get the seat. So option number one, which is a new program, is at the Reeves. It's going to be a 5-day-a-week program from 8:30 to 1 p.m. The tuition for that program is $6,300. And priority will be given to children 4 or 5 years old, assuming that then they would be going into kindergarten in Woburn Public Schools. Option two, also a new program, and that will be at the Reeves and the Shamrock. This is also a 5-day program, but it goes from 8:30 a.m. to 11, and the tuition for that is $4,300, and again, priority for ages 4 and 5. And option three, which is the current model that we have, is a 4-day-a-week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, either from 8:30 a.m. to 11 or 11:50 to 2:20, and that is $3,300, and there's no change to the tuition there. We did vote on the tuition increase, so Mr. Oliveira made a motion to approve the tuition increase. I seconded the tuition increase for the 2 new peer model programs, because again, there's no change in the current program. And then we did suggest that be moved up to the full committee for a vote as well, so the community is more aware, and we voted on that at our last school committee meeting. After that, we went into a budget update. This again is still by Dr. Ryan. Currently, we're on track with our budget. Several students remain out of district and are waiting for placements. And we continue to see volatility in out-of-district costs, which are trending upward as we saw in our budget. And we're continuously monitoring the circuit breaker as well, which we also saw in our budget. Our next topic was special education update from Ms. Tisdale. Special Education Parent Advisory Council, CPAC. Update from Ms. Tisdale. I'm reading from my phone. So the big news for the CPAC was their transition fair, which actually took place the night of our meeting, which is why our meeting was at 5 instead of 6. So this was the 20th annual fair. It's open to families across all grade levels. And inside of Woburn or outside of Woburn, there was tons of different organizations represented across the Commonwealth, and it was just a great opportunity for families to go and learn and connect with each other, and I know a lot of members at this table were there as well. So it was great, and I'm sure we'll hear another update from them at our next meeting. But some organizational updates from CPAC. They have officer nominations in May. Planning is underway for some potential end-of-year events, and they are continuing outreach efforts with families, and they're hoping to do some summer programming as well. And the last thing we discussed was student artwork that's displayed in the school committee room, and how can we best acknowledge the artist or artists at our meetings. So you'll notice the artwork around the wall. We thought it would be nice to sort of thank the students for their efforts and recognize them. This artwork currently was changed out, I guess, by Ms. Tifo, but she is retired, so our thought is to work with the new visual and performing arts coordinator once they're on board to figure out the best way that we can recognize students and figure out how and when the artwork is changed out. In the interim, Dr. Ryan's going to connect with Ms. Kathy Boge to gather additional information on, like, again, how the artwork's changed out and things that we can do so then we can best recognize the artist. And then motions and votes, as mentioned, Mr. Oliveira motioned to approve the ECP pure model tuition increase, and Jesse seconded, and it was an all in favor, and then it was voted on by the school committee. And documents used, you'll find a link to Dr. Ryan's information as it pertains to the special education update. And our next meeting is April 29th, so that's before this meeting, at 6 o'clock here in this room, and our meeting adjourned at 6:40 p.m.
All right, any questions for Student Services and Achievement? Seeing none, moving on to correspondence. I will start. I have John Wetzel, Municipal ADA Improvement Grant. Bethany Newman reached out about the 4th and 5th grades that sang at the Massachusetts Music Educators Association Northeast District Treble Course, and added a video, which was fantastic. We had the Community Forum, of course, last night for the principal at the Malcolm White, which is pending. Lindsay Sheenan emailed me about school celebrations, which I will forward to the committee after this meeting. Christy Nickerson sent an email as the president of the WTA requesting support and advocating for the Retirement Plus bill to be brought to the floor as soon as possible. I know the superintendent will be writing a letter, and if the committee so chose, I could also write a letter. But I figured I'd put that to the committee to see if they wanted me to do that.
I would like to make a motion for you to write a letter for the Retirement Plus bill.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And finally, one Dr. Crowley sent an email regarding a scholarship he received for the Global Leadership Development Program in Panama in October, all expenses paid. And there are 30 attendees from all over the country, and perhaps Dr. Crowley would like to say a little more about this.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going back in time years. So one of the things that has influenced me as an educator was a trip to Brazil that I took when I was in Brockton, and it gave me a perspective that I didn't have. And so this came across my desk as an application for superintendents to apply through MASS, all expenses paid, to go to Panama and to examine what education looks like in another place. And so it was a process. I had to apply through a written process and do an interview, and I was selected as the candidate to represent MASS. And as Ms. Cormier indicated, there are 30 superintendents. I don't know who they are yet, but it's a 5-day trip to Panama in October around the Indigenous Peoples holiday. And so we will I'll provide more details when I get them, including an itinerary, and I'm excited to learn.
Excellent. We will have a report on that when you return.
As someone who lived in Panama for about half a year, hydrate. Hydrate, Dr. Crowley. You will not feel heat like the Panamanian sun. So
In October?
Enjoy. It's seasons. It's hot and wet, or hot and dry. Most of the time, hot and wet. It's very skinny country and surrounded by water. So good luck.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Any other correspondence? Yes, Ms. Wetzel.
Just that if the community goes onto our website, you'll notice a new link. It's negotiation updates. So we have begun the process of negotiating with the WTA, and I want to thank everyone that's been in the room here on our side, and then the WTA. I know a lot of work has gone into it. So community members that are interested, you can just go on that link, and it'll take you to brief meeting note recaps, and when the next meetings will be. So it's just a good way to stay informed.
Thank you, Ms. Wetzel. Any future agenda items from the community, the folks here. I will say I do have FY27 public hearing and vote for our next meeting, as well as the last day of school. Ms. Nagel?
Discussing hybrid and the possibility of having hybrid meetings.
Meetings. Anyone else have anything to add to my list? No. Great. With that, I will take a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body and the chair so declares, which I do.
Make a motion to go into exec for that reason.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Roll call
opposed?
vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm,
Selective. Maybe I'll go home.
Yeah.
Ms. Crowley,
Yes.
Ms. Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Nagel,
Yes.
Mr. Olivera,
Yes.
Ms. Wetzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier.
In favor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I shall stand.